It's time to lock in. We're talking SEC, college football, and more. This is AP as we see it.
I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I said I'm all about that action.
I'm AP Steadham from LA, Lower Alabama. This is AP as we see it, a syndicated weekly 1-hour show discussing the Southeastern Conference, college football, and the national scene and other sports. Welcome to another edition of AP as we see it. We'd like to direct our audience to our social media platforms at AP as we see it on Facebook, Instagram, X account, and our YouTube channel at AP as we see it. You can watch the video version of our broadcast, and also on Spotify, you can catch the audio version at AP as we see it. And then also we have links on our social media platforms for the YouTube channel at AP as we see it, and also my personal individual accounts on Facebook and Instagram and X account at AP Steadham. So check all those social media platforms. And we also have all the interviews that we conduct when we're covering college football games, championships, Super Bowls. The upcoming NFL draft will be next week. We'll be in Pittsburgh. I'll mention that in a little bit. All the events that we cover, the award ceremonies, all those interviews are on our YouTube channel at AP as we see it. So check out our social media platforms for all those interviews and our broadcast as well, weekly broadcasts as well. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Greer's Markets. They've been in business for 110 years, serving the Gulf Coast and beyond, 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi. The family, friends, and football, basketball, all the sports. That's a winning tradition at Greer's. You can score big savings on the fresh meats, the produce, and more for your game day spreads. And remember, if you can't make it down to one of those 29 locations, you can click on groceries to go. They'll deliver to your home, your office, your venue of choice. So that's online grocery shopping at Greer's. You can find all those things. Lucy has her famous recipes that are online, and also her book is available at the store. The children, they have the coloring contest, and they're going to make that announcement on April 25th for the winner. So pick up your coloring page at one of the locations, the Greer's Market locations. And you want to check your weekly ads for all the specials, all the holidays, the anniversaries, the birthdays, the special occasions. Think about Greer's, and you'll have such a great selection of items. You'll satisfy all your guests and your family and friends. And remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. So let's get on to our show, and we want to tell you about some of the items we're going to be discussing. Segment 1 and 4, we're going to discuss some of the spring games that happened on the campuses in the Southeastern Conference. And we have a great guest this week, Chip Brown. Chip is with Horns247, and he has the pipeline to all the information concerning the University of Texas athletics. He's very, very smart, and is a writer, columnist, an award-winning writer and columnist for Horns247. So he'll be in our segments 2 and 3. We had a discussion. We're going to have a discussion about football, men's basketball, and women's basketball as well. We know we have that transfer portal for the men's basketball, women's basketball, and we're going to catch up with that probably in the coming weeks when it's all settled down and those moves are made. And there's some surprises, of course. You think that players who are having significant playing time at a school and they're winning, they're in the NCAA tournament, but here it is, the transfer portal, they're on the move again. So I guess they're searching for a couple of different things, as I can surmise. More financial offerings to them by that team. They up the ante, their agents up the ante, so they're looking for more money financially to be satisfied. Or maybe there's a conflict with the coach. Maybe there's a conflict with players on the team. Maybe there's not enough shots involved. Who knows? But those are some of the reasons players make decisions to move on from one school to another. And we all know it could be 4 years, 4 different schools. But anyhow, The transfer portal for the men's and women's basketball is alive right now, and people are making moves, and we'll get to that at some point in the future weeks when everything settles down and they have the rosters. But we know that coaches are not going to be tampering, I don't believe, especially in football. As I always tell you each week, that the penalty is so stiff, the head coach will have to sit out for 6 games. And also, there's 20% of the football budget you'll be penalized. You have to pay for tampering with any of the players to get them to transfer after the January portal for the football programs. But anyhow, I think one thing I wanted to mention about our guest, Chip Brown, I think the school that has the most pressure this year for a number of reasons is Texas, University of Texas. And I think because you have that legacy player in Arch Manning, you have, they didn't make the playoffs last year at Texas. They came very close. And probably if they lost just one less game, they would have been in the playoffs. And Steve Sarkisian, he's been there a while now. They're spending a lot of money bringing in all the players. They brought in Will Muschamp to be the defensive coordinator. So they're spending a lot of money to get the talent, to acquire individuals that can upgrade at every position, offensive line, running back, wide receiver. So I think that Texas is under extreme pressure to be in the playoffs and make a run and contend. Not that the University of Texas, we know since 1969 they had a championship, then they had a championship in the early 2000s under Mac Brown. 69, of course, was Dale Royal. But it just seems to me that the University of Texas, with all the resources, and they'll tell you they have the resources, and they do, for every year they've been playing football at the University of Texas, but they have not utilized those resources to maximize their potential and play for enough championships. So I think with the way the system is set now, where you have the NIL, name, image, and likeness, or as some folks say, now it's legal, you can pay players. And as I always said, you have your millions, I have mine. You have to pay the right people to be part of your program. So I just think there's a lot of pressure this year, particularly with Arch Manning, second year as a starter. I think he was much improved by the end of the season, and he has, I think, increased their talent, especially at the wide receiver position, the running back position, all the specialists. So I think they have more of an offensive threat, and the defense should be better under Will Muschamp. We shall see. Although that's the goal. That's the goal by Steve Sarkisian hiring Will Muschamp. But anyway, want to move on to the Alabama A-Day game, the spring game. What did we learn? Well, I think we learned that both quarterbacks are still competing for that position. We saw the dual threat and the dynamic threat of Keelan Russell in that spring game. Austin Mack is a pocket passer. He can move and escape the rush. But I'm wondering, if I'm the coach, Kalen DeBoer, he's going to have to make this decision. If I have two quarterbacks who are both proficient pocket passers, do I start the younger player, Keelan Russell, because he has that other skill of making big plays with his legs? That is tantalizing for a head coach. And then if you make that decision to start someone like Keelan Russell, do you bury Austin Mack on the bench, never to be heard from again, unless there's some type of injury to Keelan Russell, or vice versa? If you select Austin Mack, the pocket passer, versus the dual threat Keelan Russell, is that player buried on the bench? But I'm thinking, what if you're on the road and things aren't going well? If you start Keelan Russell, he's a young quarterback on the road. The defense is having a burden of being on the field because the offense is 3 and out every possession. Do you make a switch? Do you make that substitution? We're going to find out from Kalen DeBoer what some of his decisions might be in those predicaments. And I think you want to keep the morale up of the quarterback position. I have to believe I have to play both of those quarterbacks. I know Kalen DeBoer, that's not something that he is part of his philosophy, but I don't know. There's always a first time for every coach. And with the circumstances as they develop throughout the season, and maybe they're struggling with one of the quarterbacks as the starter, I think you have to utilize every option available to you with your roster, and they're all on scholarship. And like I said, if you take the lead as the head coach and it filters down to the coaching staff, to the players, to the fans, and you drum that philosophy into all the people who support Alabama, I think it can be successful for you. But I know Kalen DeBoer, he likes to play the one quarterback, but they seem to have two quarterbacks that can win. He's going to have to make that decision at some point. I don't know if he's going to wait till the first game or he won't even announce it. A lot of coaches, they don't like to announce the starter until they see the player trot onto the field the day of the first game against East Carolina, September 5th. We're going to find out. But anyway, our first guest for segment 2 and 3 is going to be Chip Brown from Horns247. We will be discussing University of Texas athletics, the football program, men's and women's basketball. And we're going to be right back after these messages with our guest, Chip Brown from Horns247. We'll be right back with AP as we see it.
Hi, I'm AP Steadham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
And we're back with AP as we see it, and our very special guest, a friend of the show, is Chip Brown from Horns247, writer and columnist. Welcome back to AP as we see it, Chip.
Hey, glad to be here.
Always good to talk about the University of Texas. I think when I was growing up, Chip, that was kind of my second team, I guess, because they were on television a lot. And of course, that was a while back, but I knew a little bit about Texas anyway. But
and
that's right. That's right. And even before, I'm gonna date myself, Chris Schenkel and Bud Wilkinson.
There you go.
And the Wishbone era, and Chris Gilbert, and all those great ball players they had way back then. But Chip, I guess I should ask you about Steve Sarkisian. He's had some additions to the staff, primarily Will Muschamp. So, how do you foresee those changes impacting the program?
Well, Texas is going all in. There's no two ways about it. They approach the off season with an all-in mentality from a player standpoint, and obviously from the hiring of Will Muschamp, because Pete Kwiatkowski, the 5-year defensive coordinator at Texas, had done a good job.
Right.
But Steve Sarkisian felt like it could be even better. And the thing about Will Muschamp is, I mean, they have their shared Nick Saban experience. Will Muschamp said that was a real connector for them, having both been assistants under Steve Sarkisian. They've both won, or under Nick Saban, they've both won national championships with Nick Saban. Of course, Muschamp at LSU in 2003 and Sarkisian in 20 at Alabama. And, Steve Sarkisian, the default of Pete Kwiatkowski was to, play off coverage and try to keep things in front of you, make you drive the length of the field and try to hold teams to a field goal. Right. And I think Steve Sarkisian wanted a more aggressive approach, a Kirby Smart approach, more man coverage, tougher, no easy, quick throws available, that everything gets contested, everything gets a challenge and more pressure. So, it's interesting because Will Muschamp was at Texas from 2008 to 2010 before he became the head coach at Florida. And so Texas fans have fond memories. The 2008 and 2009 seasons were very successful. The 2010 season was sort of Mac Brown's meltdown after the loss to Alabama in the national championship game. And in a way, Will Muschamp went. But he said his wife, Carol, loved Austin so much that when when Muschamp told her that Steve Sarkisian had called, she's like, "We can go tomorrow." So
she had
she had a good
the
experience.
blessing. Yeah, the blessing from the wife, that counts for everything. Chip, it sure does. Chip, new team, new players, 45 newcomers, 25 freshmen, I think 20 transfer players. So what should improve on this team? What needs to improve so they can reach the playoffs and contend for that national championship?
Well, I think Arch Manning is improved. I thought it was interesting. Right. We talked to Steve Sarkisian yesterday, and we were asking about Arch's leadership, and he said it's night and day different from a year ago, because a year ago they wanted Arch Manning to lead, but Arch felt like he needed to earn it. And then, of course, we saw there were struggles early in the season with Arch kind of settling into his role. There were struggles on the offensive line. There were struggles with Steve Sarkisian continuing to call a vertical offense when he didn't have the offensive line to protect Manning. So at midseason, he switches to a quick passing game, and that, netted some positive results, including the win over Oklahoma. And then you saw Arch get his confidence starting in that fourth quarter comeback against Mississippi State. His last 5 games, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. He ran for 4 touchdowns, a 35-yard touchdown run, a 23-yard touchdown run, a 60-yard touchdown run. He even caught a touchdown pass against Arkansas. And so Sarkisian said the confidence that Arch has now and his comfortability as a leader are night and day different from a year ago. So I think that helps. Sarkisian wants the offense to be more explosive. So they went and got Cam Coleman. They went and got make you miss running backs like Raleigh Brown from Arizona State and Hollywood Smothers from NC State. These guys have, joystick abilities to make guys miss. And they didn't have that last year. And then they tried to fortify the offensive line, brought in Melvin Siani from Wake Forest, a really top end, pass blocker at right tackle. You've still got Trevor Gooseby at left tackle, who, could end up being a first round pick. And then they're going to bring in 6th year offensive lineman Lawrence Seymour from Western Kentucky in June. And the amount of experience on that offensive line is 3,000 snaps higher than it was at the beginning of last year.
What a difference.
So, world of difference. Defensively, you brought in Rasheem Biles from Pitt, the linebacker who's got, 3 pick sixes in his career. The guy just makes plays, and they've been so impressed with him. If you're going to lose Anthony Hill to the draft, you bring in Rasheem Biles, Justin Cryer from Florida State. These are guys who wanted to try to play for a national championship. And Cam Coleman said that today, that, hey, I want to try and win it all here. He played on 2 5-7 teams at Auburn. He's ready to, play on a team that has a chance to contend. And so Steve Sarkisian was selling that to guys like Hollywood Smothers and Raleigh Brown, and they bought in. And so we'll see how much better this Texas team can be.
I would think Cam Coleman, he's the person I think a lot of college football will be watching, because he can make a dramatic improvement in production, because we know he's very talented. I think he is. And so I'm anxious to watch him and Arch Manning as a duo in this passing game, where he's going to try to get it down the field now, because it seems like the offensive line can protect for longer and can initiate that style of offense. Any other things?
I think too that you have Ryan Wingo, who good player. He had better numbers than Cam Coleman last year.
Yes,
and he immediately becomes one of the best number 2 receivers in the country. And Ryan Wingo was begging Cam Coleman to come to Texas, saying, "Hey, we can help each other here.
Yes.
You on one side, me on the other. They can't double both of us. So, let me help you out a little bit."
Yeah, that's the type of transfer you like, where the other receiver is trying to attract talent as well. So that's a perfect marriage. The receivers are not competing in any way except to make each other better. I like that aspect, what you just mentioned. You hear things about Steve Sarkisian. Is he happy there in Texas? Are the people happy with him? Chip, what would you say about Steve Sarkisian at the University of Texas?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Steve Sarkisian has done an excellent job of building the program. He laid out a blueprint for Texas officials when he got hired. He has stuck to the plan. He said, we're going to get bigger in the trenches. We're going to get faster on the outside. He's done that. They've contended. They were playing really good football at the end of last year. They just missed the playoff, but they were rolling there in those, in the last 5 games. And so, yeah, I think people are happy with Steve Sarkisian. I think, if there's a fascination for him, it might be, going back to the NFL. So that's always a little nerve-wracking when his name comes up in, possible job searches involving the NFL. But he has said that he's, quote, borderline obsessed with winning a national championship. And so, I think he feels like 2026 is going to be a year where Texas, makes a run for it. So we'll see. But yeah, I think, the way he's built the program, he keeps bringing in top end talent, especially on the offensive side, the quarterbacks, the receivers. So yeah, Texas fans are happy with Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, he's a well-known play caller, and I think that now he has the requisite talent at the wide receiver position and the running backs and this offensive line. Hey, Chip, how can folks find you? We're going to go to another segment and speaking more about Texas athletics, but how can folks find you?
Horns247.com. If you love college football, that you become an annual member at Horns 24/7. You get VIP access to all the, team sites on the 24/7 Sports Network and an annual membership to Paramount Plus. So you can watch all those UFC fights for free. It's a good deal.
Hey, we're going to be right back with our very special guest, Chip Brown from Horns 24/7 to discuss the University of Texas athletics. And we'll be right back after these messages with AP as we see it.
Hi, I'm AP Steadham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
And we're back with AP as we see it, and our very special guest, Chip Brown of Horns 24/7. He's a writer, a columnist. He's able to cover everything, University of Texas and their athletic program. Chip, we were discussing the football program. We're going to talk about the men's basketball and the women's basketball too. But the running game was not effective last year. So with that offensive line and the new running backs, that should improve.
Yeah, it was awful. Honestly, until the last 2 games, Texas was on pace to have the worst per game rushing average since 1944.
Oh my goodness.
That's embarrassing. They ended up having the worst since 2014. So that's not nearly as bad as 1944. They had 2 big rushing performances against Texas A&M and against Michigan in the Citrus Bowl that kind of saved it. But yeah, it was really weird, AP, because they took until game 9 to figure out the right combination of players on the offensive line. They had the guys from the beginning, but they started young guys at left guard, and it wasn't working. And then in game 9, they plugged in 4th-year junior Connor Robertson at center, moved Cole Hudson, a senior, over to left guard where he had played for 3 previous years, and they started to play better. And so I think fans were frustrated with Kyle Flood, the offensive line coach, and he has the title of offensive coordinator, even though we all know Sarkisian calls the plays.
Right.
But yeah, that was a huge disappointment because they didn't run the ball effectively. I mean, those backs were getting hit in the backfield, and the loss at Florida, that was a mess. They couldn't run a lick against Kentucky. Yeah, it was bad. And so they go get shiftier running backs in Raleigh Brown from Arizona State and Hollywood Smothers from NC State. They brought in a really talented freshman running back named Derek Cooper, who's been very impressive in the spring. So I think the running game is going to be better. They lost, Quintravian Wisner to Florida State in the transfer portal. But I think Steve Sarkisian said, we need guys with more make you miss ability. And so he went out and got Brown and Smothers. And I think those guys are going to be productive.
Mm-hmm. Looking at the defensive side, you have Simmons from Duncanville High School, outstanding edge rusher. I heard y'all have somebody on the other side it'll be a dual threat.
Yeah, you've got Colin Simmons, led the SEC in sacks last year with 12. Super slippery, really, and got better against the run. And that's a big deal with Will Muschamp coming in. You gotta defend that run. On the other side, they've got in Muschamp's scheme, that end plays everywhere from the 5 technique to the 3 technique. And this is a year where Justice Terry, the super talented, he was a freshman last year out of Manchester, Georgia. That was a big recruiting win for Texas over Georgia. They're really expecting Justice Terry to step up and become one of the guys, because they also have Lance Jackson.
Lance Jackson, right? Mm-hmm.
Is the younger brother of Landon Jackson, who played at Arkansas, but he's not younger. He's not smaller than Landon. He's a big, strong kid. So they've got some depth at that other end position. They also have a kid named Zena Umazulu, who was productive last year. All these guys should take a big step in being able to, hold the point of attack against the run and get to the quarterback.
But how about in the secondary, Chip? I'm always looking at the secondary because individually you're talented, but collectively you have to be on the same page. That's the most important in the secondary.
Yeah, and they started off the year really well last year, and then Michael Taft, their All-American safety, got hurt. And you'd have thought he was the most valuable player on the team, because when he went out, the whole thing fell apart. It was ridiculous. They started giving up, big chunk plays all over the place. So I think the name to keep an eye on at safety is Jelani McDonald. I think this is a kid who could be all SEC, super talented against the run, against the pass, freak athletically, 6'2", long arms. He will hit you. And, at corner, they brought in a transfer from Rutgers named Bo Masco, who they've been really happy with. Tough, not the biggest guy in the world, but just sticky. And then, Cade Phillips, who's going to be a sophomore this year, is a guy they think is going to be a star. And so those are a couple names to keep an eye on in the secondary.
Okay. We're going to go to the schedule about a minute with that, and then we're going to move to the basketball. The schedule: Ohio State, the second game. You have to travel to Tennessee, to LSU, to Texas A&M. How about the schedules, Chip?
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State, that's a blockbuster. That's a marquee matchup. I think Texas wants revenge for the loss that they suffered last year. I think they feel like Arch Manning's better equipped for that game.
Much better.
Year.
Yeah, much better. Yeah.
And so it'll be maybe more explosive than 14-7. Tennessee, that looked scary if Joey Aguilar was still the quarterback of the Volunteers, but he did not get his waiver. So, look, that's a hard place to play, no matter how you slice it. So that'll be a good challenge. And then really where it gets rough for Texas is they play the last 8 weeks without a bye week, and they play 3 road games in November, and that's going to be a real challenge because you're going to be, you're playing at Texas A&M to finish. You're at LSU. You're at Arkansas. Those are tough games. Or no, Arkansas, I think is.
I had them as a home. When I
Arkansas is a home game, but you're at LSU. You're at A&M
right.
in that month, and that's, again, you're at the end of 8 straight weeks of games. That could be tough. Texas needs to stay healthy, and if they're beat up, that could be a real challenge.
Oh, for sure. But anyhow, Chip, we're going to move to the men's basketball. So they had a nice transfer from Colorado, the guard, and then a power forward from TCU. So those are 2 good additions for the Longhorns basketball team, and Sean Miller, that coach.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Miller showed he can coach. He almost made the Elite 8. And I think the money guys, whatever, they're happy. They ready to spend some money. So, Isaiah Johnson comes in from Colorado. He was a freshman last year, electric with the ball in his hands, kind of a one-man fast break, long arms. He's a plus 6 foot wingspan for a guy 6'1", and finishes at the rim, can break you down. And then, David Punch, this guy's 6'7", AP, and he was 3rd in the Big 12 in block shots. He had 66 blocks last year, which is more than Texas's top 4 shot blockers combined. And the guy's 6'7". So he's a tough guy. He loves contact. He loves mixing it up. He's a good passer. They did not have good low post passing last year. They got a 7-footer in Matis Vokatitis, who half the time you're wondering, why aren't they getting him the ball? Well, David Punch is a guy who will look for Matis in the low post passing game. And so they need to fill in some gaps, but they do have a talented freshman class coming in, including McDonald's All-American Austin Gooseby, who is the younger brother of the left tackle on the football team, Trevor Gooseby. And he's a really talented wing, 6'5" guy who can, beat you inside and outside. So I think this is a sign of some exciting times to come for Texas basketball.
Women's basketball in the Final Four were beaten by the UCLA team. I discussed with you. I saw them play each other in Las Vegas, and Texas was the winner by, I think, 11 points. But UCLA, that was their only loss. Texas women's basketball, it's surprising they have so many people transferring for a team that went to the Final Four. I think they have the number 1 recruiting class, though. So What would you like to say about the women's basketball in the last about minute and a half?
Yeah, I think, you had 3 players who had starting, experience this past season get in the portal. The biggest surprise was Jordan Lee. She was the 2nd leading scorer on the team, 2nd in minutes behind Maddie Booker, 2-way player. And, I heard her dad was shopping her around. And she took a visit to South Carolina yesterday. And so, what I heard was none of the 3 who got in the portal were crazy about playing the full court pressure defense and, trying to maintain their legs on the offensive end.
I see.
So 2 of them were not a surprise. Aaliyah Crump and Justice Carlton had both sort of expressed, through their body language, whatever, that it wasn't working for them. Jordan Lee was a surprise. And so I think Vic is, but here's the thing about Vic Schaefer. He knows he can find players who want to play in his system because he wins.
Sure
so
does.
it's a different day and age, AP. If you can make more money without having to play full court pressure defense, I guess that's where we are.
I guess that's it. Hey, Chip Brown of Horns247, writer, columnist, award-winning, by the way. And we'd like to thank you and check him out because he always has the good pipeline to the information for the University of Texas Athletics. Thank you so much, Chip, and we'll be right back after these messages with AP as we see it. Thank you, Chip.
You bet. Thanks.
Hi, I'm AP Steadham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
And we're back with AP as we see it. And I'd like to thank our guest, Chip Brown from Horns247, the award-winning writer columnist. We had that discussion about Texas football, men's and women's basketball, and we really appreciate his observations and his thoughts about the Longhorn athletic programs. We're going to move on now. We want to thank our sponsor, of course, in our last segment here, Greer's Markets. Been in business since 1916, going on 110 years, 29 locations, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, serving the Gulf Coast and beyond. They have Lucy's Famous Recipes or online, and her book is available online and in the store as well. Remember, family, friends, and football, basketball, all the sports that you watch with your family and friends. That's a winning tradition at Greer's. You can score big savings on fresh meats, produce, and more for your game day spreads. Remember, if you can't make it down to one of those 29 location Groceries to Go, you can click on there and have the items delivered from Greer's Markets to your home, your office, your venue of choice. They have the coloring contest for the children. Remember, stop by, and they're going to announce the winner on April 25th. So get those coloring items for the contest for all the children. Stop by. You can check the weekly online ads. And remember, when you're having those special occasions, the birthdays, the anniversaries, the celebrations with your family and friends, consider Greer's and check the online ads weekly for all those specials. And remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. So let's continue with our show. We were discussing in our first segment the Alabama quarterback situation. And one thing about playing quarterback, and that is the centerpiece for your offense in this quarterback-driven era, a quote that you've heard me say many, many times, but you don't want to exhaust your defense. So, over time, the course of the season, if your offense is not clicking, your defense you're going to test their endurance and their stamina, and eventually it's going to collapse. So you want to make sure you have the right quarterback. And I'm just telling Kalen DeBoer and any other coach listening, you have all these people on scholarship for a reason. You had them come to university or college or school for a reason. I wouldn't have the fear of using one of them if you were struggling on offense. I just say keep that option available at all times, and I think it'll serve you well, not only with your team, but your coaching staff and your fans and your alumni. They're going to see quarterback couldn't move the ball, and by halftime they had 0 points or maybe a field goal or a touchdown, and they came back in the second half, inserted the second string quarterback, and miraculous things happen. So just don't let that be a roadblock to you making the correct decision with your team, and show some courage out there, and you don't play with fear. Just make those decisions based on your ability, that you've watched these quarterbacks during practice and they have ability, and give them a chance. That's all I say. In this era where it's going to be hard for that quarterback to transfer because that transfer portal is over and done with. They'll have to sit out the entire year. So you do have some leverage with your quarterback. And that's a significant change in the last year when they have only the one transfer portal in January. So, but anyhow, we're going to look at University of Florida. They had a spring game as well. John Summerall, he's a brand new coach at University of Florida. And the report said that their two quarterbacks were pretty solid. Aaron Philo, Tramel Jones Jr., Aaron Philo, 21 for 38, 193 yards, a couple of touchdowns. Tramel Jones Jr., 13 for 17, a couple of TDs, 210 yards. they played fairly well. The wide receiver showed some flashes. The offensive line has a way to go to be SEC ready. So I think that Coach Summerall stated he sees the potential with the front seven on defense, but they're trying to seek the right combination in the secondary. And I would say this, that at the University of Florida, I know this is not what Coach Summerall would like to hear, but I would say he's trying to make some incremental strides with being the first year at the University of Florida because it is so competitive, and I don't think he has the championship roster at this point. He probably can beat some teams and have an upset or two, but I would just say if the Florida fans can see some incremental strides, as I described them, with their offense especially and defensively, and get complementary football, some balance with those Gators, because we know that he's a good football coach, but it takes some time to get your roster where they are SEC ready on a weekly basis. You'll have some flashes during the season, maybe 1 or 2 games, but you want to be able to compete week in and week out. So look for Florida probably to make some improvements. And Coach Summerall, he seems to be a hard-nosed coach. How would you describe that? I don't know. He's not taking any excuses, and he's trying to win every football game, even though I think that's a lofty goal at this point, but I think that's how I would describe a hard-nosed coach. He really doesn't take excuses, and he's not afraid to make tough decisions with roster changes and those types of things. Looking at Mississippi State, Coach Jeff Lebby, this is his 3rd year. When you watched Mississippi State last year, I covered the Mississippi State-Tennessee game. They took Tennessee to an overtime situation. They had some other close games. I think this year the goal would be to win a few of those close games. And they have their quarterback, Camario Taylor. He's developing with his passing game, and they're trying to get more explosive plays. Mississippi State, Jeff Lebby, he's an offensive guru type head coach, so trying to get more explosive plays. Defensively, some of the goals, they're trying to improve the tackling and being more physical and create some turnovers. Now, the offensive line is going to have some new starters. That should help the passing game if they've improved, because one thing you don't want a young quarterback running around for his life trying to complete passes down the field. An interesting twist for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. They returned Zach Arnett. He was the head coach for 1 season, was fired. Now he's coming back as a defensive coordinator. So maybe you'll see some improvement there as the defensive coordinator for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. But like I said, you watched them last year. They were a better team. They just couldn't win those close games. So maybe this year they're going to surprise some people. And I think it's all dependent probably on that young quarterback, Camario Taylor, and how well his journey leads them to being a better offensive team. Jeff Lebby, he's pretty good offensive coach, of course. So we'll see what happens with Mississippi State trying to get better on defense, improve the offensive line, more explosive plays on the offensive side. Now we're going to head up to Tennessee. Josh Heupel, head coach. They didn't make the playoffs last year. They were in the playoffs 2 years ago. They have so their goal, is to return to the college football playoff. They have the quarterback battle, George McIntyre and Faison Brandon, the freshman. George McIntyre, very highly touted recruit. I think those are the 2 people that are really in contention for the quarterback position, even though they have a transfer as well. But so those 2 quarterbacks, they're working on their fundamentals, their technique, and I think the fortunes of the Volunteers will depend upon how well they grasp the offense. And because Josh Heupel, if you've watched his offenses over the years, usually the receivers get open. He has a good scheme. But sometimes the quarterbacks at Tennessee have not been that accurate. So if these quarterbacks can receive the blocking from the offensive line, be accurate with their throws, Tennessee can make that comeback to the college football playoffs. Not going to be easy, of course, because as we know, this Southeastern Conference is very, very competitive. So I think that Tennessee, they're trying to find the right quarterback. And I would tell Josh Heupel the same thing I tell any other head coach. Use all your quarterbacks that are on your roster. Don't worry about the egos of the the quarterbacks, their families, the fans. You're fighting for your life to be the head coach of Tennessee, and I would just keep that in mind. Now, another acquisition that was highly publicized, and for good reason, Jim Knowles came over from Penn State as the new defensive coordinator. Now, he was a defensive coordinator for Ohio State when they made that run and won the national championship a few years ago. So I think Tennessee's defense, watch out to see if they show some improvement, because we all know when Tennessee made the playoffs, it was because of their running game and their defense. It wasn't because of the passing attack 2 years ago. Now, they're trying to improve that passing game, but I think if they can improve that defense under Jim Knowles, get a quarterback to be consistent and grasp that offense, because like I said, Josh Heupel, I found that he's very good coaching the quarterbacks, and his system lends for open receivers. So whoever becomes the starter, if they can be accurate with their passes, and I think Tennessee would be fine. Not going to be easy, as I said. They're going to have some tight ball games. I don't see any team in this league, Southeastern Conference, just dominating. I always tell you that Georgia is my pick to start the season because they know how to win in spite of themselves. I mean, even then when they couldn't run the football and they were dropping all the passes, they still won the conference. So Kirby Smart and his staff have the talent to win football games various ways. And it may not be pretty, but at the end of the day, they're in the championship game for the SEC. They're winning the SEC, and they're making the playoffs. So, but I would just say that we just spoke about these four teams: Alabama, Florida, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. It'll be interesting, and there's more spring games to be played in the coming weeks. But SEC football, it'll be here very soon. And just one notation, check on my website, my YouTube channel at AP As We See It. We'll be at the draft in Pittsburgh. That's the first time it was ever held in Pittsburgh. It was in New York for about 50 years, and it starts to branch out to all these cities around the country. So it's in Pittsburgh. So I'll be in Pittsburgh for the NFL 2026 NFL draft. So that's this edition of AP As We See It. And we'll be back next week from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the 2026 NFL draft. Thank you.
Hi, I'm AP Steadham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.